Hello and welcome to the Faith, Family, and Wrestling Podcast. I am your host, Joey Emmerich, and I am so glad to be here. So glad you guys are here. This podcast, it is taking me 2 days, several hours between the 2 days to get this out, but I am excited. We're finally going to get this podcast out for everyone to hear and listen to. And I just want to thank you guys for listening to this podcast. It's the first episode of the Faith, Family, and Wrestling Podcast. You can listen to us on Podbean, watch us on YouTube. Please subscribe, please like, follow, comment, review. Let me know what you think. If you think there's some improvements you would like to the show, let me know. I would love to do this show, not just for me, but for all of you. Want to encourage you to also go on to Facebook, Faith, Family, and Wrestling, and go on to Instagram with Faith, Family, and Wrestling. Like and follow us. You'll notice I'm going to post stuff, but it's not just going to be wrestling stuff. I'm also going to post scriptures that tie into what's going on in wrestling. And I want it to be a community thing where we can talk to each other and build each other up on these different social media platforms. Here's the other thing. A lot of you guys and gals out there listening right now probably know there are a lot of podcasts about wrestling. And I will admit, for me personally, I really struggled with whether I should do a wrestling podcast or not. I struggled with doing a podcast in general because for me, when I talk about doing a podcast, I am, a little bit about myself, I am a youth minister. So I spend a lot of time diving into the Word for work. I also spend a lot of time diving into the Word for myself. But also as I work so hard in my ministry to be there for my students, I'm also a father and a husband. So I've got 2 kids, Joel Lee, who is 3 years old, and Corbin, who's 2 years old. They are bundles of joy. And then my wife, Candace, who is, I'm not going to tell you her age. I know better than that. But I've got a family. So with my ministry and my family and even just my personal faith with God, I've got so much going on in my life. There's so much stuff that I have decided and said, if I'm going to do anything, I've got to do it with a purpose. Like there has to be a reason behind it. It just can't be, I'm doing this because this is fun, or I'm doing this because everyone else is, or because maybe someone will like this, or maybe it'll be enjoyable. There's got to be a purpose to it. And so I sat there and I thought about it. And the main reason why I decided, you know what, I have to do this podcast is because every time I listen to a wrestling podcast, because I love wrestling, so I love listening to wrestling podcasts, I can never listen to them at home. And if I do, I have to have my headphones in. Because there's so much out there where it's either the language, the commercials, the innuendos, the way they talk, the negativity. I just don't want my kids listening to that stuff. And I thought about it and I thought, if I'm sitting here doing this, there's got to be other fathers and mothers, other brothers and sisters who they don't want their siblings, they don't want their kids listening to that type of junk. So they just don't listen to podcasts around their family. And then my thought is, well, if you're not listening to around your family, then this is pulling you away from your family. So if you're being pulled away from your family, that's not good either. So my thought was, I want to do a podcast that's family friendly, that talks about wrestling. And as I thought about it deeper and deeper, I wanted to do more than just a family friendly podcast. I wanted to do a podcast all about my 3 passions in life: my faith, my relationship with Christ, how I walk, how I talk, what He tells me to do in His scriptures, my prayer life, I'm passionate about that. My ministry, serving others, loving on others, that is my top passion. And then my family is my second passion. I love my kids, my wife. I would do anything for those three. Actually, coming up in a couple days, maybe even today, I don't know. My wife is expecting our third kid. So those four people in my life, I love them so much, and I would do anything for them. So I sit there and those passions, and then my passion for wrestling, I wanted to take all of that, mix it together and bring it together to do something different. I wanted to do more than just have a podcast that talks about stuff. I want to do a podcast that we give it over to God and He does something powerful with it. So if I'm passionate about Him, I'm passionate about my family, and I'm passionate about wrestling, and I bring all of those together and I say, God, it's yours. Take it. Do with it. I'm going to talk about it, and you use me to spread your word, spread your message, to speak to those out there who want to know more about you, who already know about you but want to grow closer to you, and to those that maybe don't know you and just they like wrestling. This is the opportunity for them to get to know you. That's what this podcast is it takes my faith. We're going to talk about that. And not just my faith in Christ in general. What the Bible says, what others say. We're going to look at wrestlers who are Christians. We're going to have other people come on and give their testimony, whether it's celebrity, whether it's just Joe Schmo off the street. If they've got a testimony that's awesome, I think it needs to be shared, and this is a perfect way for that to happen. Also, I want to not just have testimony, but we're going to have just talking about my family, and I encourage you to send me messages and post on Facebook about stuff you're doing with your family. Even on pictures, I want to see pictures of you with your family. My Instagram is going to have me and my family doing wrestling stuff more than likely because my kids love wrestling. My daughter is a huge Becky Lynch and Kevin Owens fan. My wife loves Brock Lesnar. And my son loves to body slam me. He doesn't really have a favorite wrestler yet, but he loves to wrestle. And so I'll probably post pictures of stuff like that. And you'll hear stories about them, and I'll talk about them off and on throughout my podcasts. But I want to talk about them, and I want to talk about wrestling. And I want to bring it all together and just see what God can do when we just give Him our passions and let Him go. Not giving up some of the other stuff we're passionate about, giving it over and letting Him use those passions to do great things. I hope you guys are excited and ready. Now it's time to dive in and really take on faith, family, and wrestling. First thing I want to talk about is I want to dive into some family time. I want to talk about what I'm passionate about, and one of those big things is my family. So let's talk about family. Uh-oh. You probably sit there and go, wait, what was that? Why does that say uh-oh? That's what my wife says all the time whenever I get up to preach. And I say, so let me tell you about my family. Or this past week, me and my wife, and she goes, uh-oh, and is always afraid of what I'm about to say so I don't embarrass the family. And I will let you know anything I talk about on this podcast, anything I talk about from the pulpit or into anybody really, I check with my wife and my kids first to make sure it's okay, because I don't want to embarrass them without permission to embarrass them. Because I have promised them, I will embarrass you, but I'm going to get your permission before I do it. So, talking about family time, I want to talk a little bit about one of the traditions me and my kids have started is we've started watching Christmas B flick movies. Actually, some of them are C and D flick movies, and this all stemmed because my wife loves Hallmark movies. Candace can't stop watching Hallmark Christmas movies, and I'm in love. I got to get married by Christmas. I I'm engaged to this guy, but he's a bad dude, so I'm going to marry this guy. And it's always the same storyline, always the same thing. You can predict what they're about to say before they even say it, even if you haven't seen the movie before. It's bad. So my kids and I decided we were going to look on Vudu Free, Hulu, Tubi TV for some just really crummy, bad Christmas movies, because we just wanted to laugh. So we decided we were going to start watching some of these movies, and we picked out this movie called Saving Christmas. And when we picked out Saving Christmas, we did not expect Saving Christmas to be what it was. I was expecting it to just be kind of these kids going out and trying to prove Santa and do the right thing, but it's not quite like that. When it comes to this movie, one of the things about this movie that was so crazy was this kid and his sister. They're trying to prove that their dad is a ghost, and then they quit trying to prove their dad is a ghost and decide that they're going to prove that Santa Claus is real. And they decide that they're going to prove Santa Claus is real by... This is ridiculous. I know it's going to sound so crazy and so dumb, but they decide they're going to prove Santa Claus is real by doing the scientific method. And I don't know about you, but when I think scientific method, I think science experiments. We're going to say, here's our hypothesis. Here's how this is all going to work. Here's our plan. And what they decide is their scientific method is going to the post office and asking where all the letters to Santa get sent. And when they do this, they discover all the letters to Santa are actually sent and stored at this one toy shop. And what you later discover is Santa Claus actually works and owns the toy shop. And he's working, and he's got a guy that comes in that he wants this guy to help change things so that people will believe in Santa again, and so that people will buy toys from the toy shop. Really weird. Don't know why Santa's making money, but he is. And so this guy comes to a conclusion, and everything culminates because there's a wrestling show that happens in this city every single year. And as this wrestling show happens in the city every year, everybody gets so excited, and they go to this show, and the announcer is Tommy Dreamer. Like legit, Tommy Dreamer is the announcer. Reading the Christmas story the night before Christmas, before the match starts, is Maria Kanellis. And then, right before the match is about to begin, here comes Mike Kanellis, the good guy who's supposed to come in and save Christmas and beat the bad guy, who is Gangrel, which I just loved that he was in this movie. So you get Mike Kanellis, Gangrel, and Mike Kanellis comes in, and he just goes, I'm sorry, guys, I can't save Christmas. My leg is broken. I am at home in my chair. And everybody's like rioting. They're starting to boo. They're starting to throw stuff. They're all getting very angry. And out of nowhere, here comes Santa Claus to save the day. And he walks out the ramp, and everybody gets quiet, and he starts to walk down and just stands in the middle of the ring. And then people start to get a little restless, and they start to throw stuff into the ring. And then all of a sudden, Santa Claus starts to float in the air with magical dust floating all around him. And I'm just sitting there going, what in the world? What is going on? Why is Santa Claus floating? I didn't know Santa had that power. I knew his reindeer could fly, but I didn't know Santa could fly. So here's Santa floating, and then he goes, you all want to see a miracle tonight? Ho, 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 ho. Boom, snaps his fingers, and Mike Kanellis disappears from his living room, and he's sitting on his couch in the middle of the ring with a broken foot. And then Santa walks over, puts his hand over the leg of Mike Kanellis and heals Mike Kanellis' leg. Yeah, that's you heard what I just said. He healed Mike Kanellis' leg. And Mike Kanellis gets up, and then he has the match. So you have Mike Kanellis versus Gangrel. They actually show about 30 to 40 seconds of this match. Actually, let them wrestle. Tommy Dreamer somehow gets involved. It's just a crazy match. Everything's going nuts. It's all just mayhem. And everybody celebrates because Mike Kanellis wins. Santa Claus is real. And wrestling saved Christmas. That's not the point of the show, is not to say that wrestling saved Christmas. But in my mind, that is the ultimate point of that movie. That is what I took away from that movie, is that wrestling saved Christmas. And this movie was so bad, my kids and I were laughing so hard at this that we decided we had to find another one. So we looked up Christmas movies with wrestlers. And we found a couple. The Miz has a couple Christmas movies out. Big Show was in Jingle All the Way. But we found one that I'd never heard of. And as soon as I read the title, I knew this movie was going to be bad. So I had to watch it, of course. So we watched Santa with Muscles, starring Hulk Hogan. And this is what I'm going to tell you about Santa with Muscles, starring Hulk Hogan. This is a movie that they wanted to make family friendly, make it TVG. All right, so they wanted anybody and everybody to be able to watch this movie, but they also wanted it to be action-packed. They wanted to have a wrestling feel without ever mentioning wrestling or having any wrestling. They also wanted to have way over-the-top Halloween character bad guys that drive around in an ice cream truck. Hulk Hogan. They wanted to have an orphanage, a church, a whole bunch of orphans, to include a young 10-year-old Mila Kunis, and a whole bunch of just crazy stuff all thrown in to include that Hulk Hogan's character gets amnesia and gets convinced that he's actually Santa Claus. And in order to save the Christmas spirit and to save the town's Christmas, he has to go around and beat up the bad guys. And Santa Claus is walking around no longer in the big red suit, but instead he's got a red vest, his sleeves cut off, and he's walking around just muscles bulging out. Just madness, insanity, crazy. Hilarious. It was fantastic, but it was terrible. It was so bad that it was good. That it was one of those movies. Now, I wouldn't even say B flick. I would say more like an F flick, maybe even down to a Z flick. The acting was terrible. It was not a good movie. The writers were bad, but even with all that, my kids and I loved it. My daughter actually wanted to watch it again, so we watched it again later that night. And I will tell you, that is a movie that you should only watch once in your lifetime. Not even once a year, once in your lifetime. If you watch it once a year, even twice a year, doing it 2 times in one day is a terrible idea. I lost brain cells, I'm pretty sure, from watching that movie 2 times in one day. But my daughter loved it. And then she said, "Daddy, can you throw me like Santa threw the bad guys?" And I said, "Yeah, okay." So I throw her onto the bed, and she loves it and laughs. And I don't know. It's one of those movies that was bad, but the memories that I got to make with my kids through that movie was fantastic. I want to know, what are some movies that you and your family, and if you're single and you don't really have family that's close by, maybe friends, because I've discovered friends are your family. Whether you call them blood family or not, friends are family. I want to know, with your family, with your friends, with those you're close with, do you have any Christmas movies you like to watch? And if you do, what's your favorite Christmas movie with a wrestler? I want to hear some other Christmas movies with wrestlers. And if I'm missing some, I want to hear them and I want to see them so that next year my daughter and I and my son can watch these and just really enjoy them and get a lot out of them. If you have anything, comment below what your favorite Christmas movie is, or go on to Facebook, go on to Instagram, and go to the Faith, Family, and Wrestling page, and you can comment there. Now, I want to talk about wrestling. All right, folks, that's it. It is wrestling time. It is time to get into what you all have probably listened to the podcast for. And I don't want to talk about Christmas stuff. I don't want to talk about anything that's real recent. We'll get into some real recent stuff. But really, I want to talk about the best of wrestling in 2019. And for me, what I thought was the best of wrestling. And what I liked about wrestling in 2019. There was so much good, and there was also a lot of bad, and a lot of people hated on, and I'm still not sure why people hated on stuff so much. Because the first thing I liked about wrestling in 2019 is my outlook on wrestling changed. I don't know if you guys are like this, but maybe you've hit a point that you sit there and go, oh, I've quit liking wrestling, or I quit watching wrestling, or I'm on the verge of quitting. If they do this, or if they do that, I'm never going to watch wrestling again. And we get so caught up on how bad this, or get so critical on these little things in wrestling that we just, I don't want to watch it anymore. And I can tell you how many different podcasts I've listened to where they say something like that throughout the year, where they say, if I didn't do this for a living, I wouldn't have watched Monday Night Raw anymore, or I would not be watching SmackDown anymore, or I would not be watching Ring of Honor anymore. I decided, why am I so critical? Why are wrestling fans so critical? Why do we get so critical about the product? Why don't we treat wrestling sometimes more like we treat Bob's Burgers? I love Bob's Burgers, and I'm going to be honest with you, there is some really stupid stuff that is said on Bob's Burgers, and they do some really stupid stuff on Bob's Burgers that is not believable at all. Or The Simpsons. Everybody loves The Simpsons. There is nothing believable about The Simpsons whatsoever. So I decided this year when I watch wrestling, instead of watching it and taking it as, could that happen in real life, or there's no way that really happened, I know it's fake, so let's just accept it and enjoy it as entertainment. So I took that on, and I will tell you, I have never enjoyed Monday Night Raw and Friday Night SmackDown more watching that. And even Ring of Honor, some of the stuff that people have hated on, I've started to enjoy Ring of Honor even a little bit because I no longer look at it critically. I look at the entertainment value. I look at what these guys are doing, and I sit there and just go, oh man, I wonder what's going to happen next. What's going to happen? What is Rusev going to do to Bobby Lashley next? Oh, what's Bobby Lashley going to do to Rusev? What's the next part of this storyline? Oh, Baron Corbin, after he dumped the dog food on Roman Reigns, I sat there and thought, what's going to happen next? That was funny. That was a great practical joke, and most people hated on it because it was Baron Corbin that did it, and they just like to hate on Baron Corbin. And I'm sitting there going, I am enjoying watching Baron Corbin now because he is the ultimate bad guy. He is the big boss that you have to beat. And everyone goes, well, the big boss has to be something believable, like Brock Lesnar. That's a big boss. Yeah, but go back and watch Sonic. Mr. Robotnik was the big boss, and nobody really believed he was that hard to beat. Sonic beat him all the time, yet he was still the big boss. He was still the guy that was on every single episode of Sonic. So I think quit looking at it critically, and it's helped me out so much. So that's one of the big things about wrestling in 2019 is when I started looking at an entertainment level, and you're going to hear that more when I talk about wrestling even through 2020, I look at it through an entertainment level. So there might be some stuff that you might say, oh, that was stupid, or I didn't like that. And you're going to hear me say, oh, no, I like that. And it's not because I want to disagree with you, or it's not because I think everything is great. There will be stuff that I sit there and go, even entertaining-wise, that wasn't entertaining. That's just not my cup of tea. Someone else might find it enjoyable, but I won't. That's going to be what you're going to hear a lot is, I enjoyed that, or I didn't enjoy it, but someone else might have. And I might even look for the ways that someone else might have enjoyed it. Because I don't want to be a Debbie Downer all the time. I want to kind of be an encouragement and build up and just talk about what I'm passionate about and what I'm really enjoying in wrestling. So that's what you're going to hear a lot of too. Now, some of the other stuff I liked about wrestling in 2019 was the return of Roman Reigns. That's right, the big dog, Roman Reigns. He was the top guy that nobody liked. Everybody hated him, felt like he was pushed down our throats. They were booing him even after he was coming out as the face of the company. People booed him. They hated on him. Nobody liked Roman Reigns. And then he got leukemia, or the leukemia came back. And then Roman Reigns became real. Everybody saw Roman Reigns as a person and no longer as a wrestler. They didn't see him as an object. They saw him for who he really was. And I think that happens way too much is we forget to look at all of these guys as real people. And sometimes we get so critical of their character that we start to push their character onto them. And that's not fair to any of these guys that wrestle. They're just out there acting. This is just a show. They have real lives at home, and they've got real stuff going on, and they don't need people hating on them. And Roman Reigns, as he left, when he came back after beating cancer, he came back, and what I loved about it is WWE said, we're going to let him come back and do what he wants. Because the other thing I noticed, and I don't know if any of you noticed this, but before he left, his passion was gone. Because people were hating on him so much. If you're supposed to be the guy and you're told, go out there and cheer on the crowd and tell them, I'm one of you, I love you guys, and they're booing you while you're doing that, it's got to get hard. It's got to be tough to go out there and push on through that. So here he comes, Roman Reigns decides, I'm going to go ahead and come back. And when he comes back, everybody's loving on him, but he doesn't want to be the face that he had been before. He just wants to be Joe. He wants to be himself. He wants to come out there. He wants to joke around if he wants to joke around. If he wants to be serious, he wants to be serious. And they've done such a great job with that, letting him be him and his character, and people are so behind him. And the funny part is a lot of critical fans are sitting there and just dumping on the whole Baron Corbin thing, but yet they still say, well, we like Roman Reigns. We like what Roman Reigns is doing. We just don't like that it's with Baron Corbin. But here is the deal. Because it's with Baron Corbin, it's making him more popular, and it's building him up more, and people are loving listening to him, and they're loving cheering him on. And so they're starting to build this up, and yes, it means more Baron Corbin on the show, but it also means more Roman Reigns. And it means Roman Reigns not in a title picture. Because if you think about it, since Roman Reigns has been back, I don't think Roman Reigns has had a title. All of 2019, no title for Roman Reigns. And yet he's still one of the biggest names in WWE this year. And as he's coming back and he's building this name for himself, I really think what's going to end up happening, and you're going to see this, is Roman Reigns is going to go out and on, I think at the Rumble, I think Roman Reigns wins the Royal Rumble. And after winning the Royal Rumble, Roman Reigns is going to challenge The Fiend. And then you're going to get this story arc from Rumble to Mania of Roman Reigns versus The Fiend. And you're going to get to see Roman Reigns and The Fiend take on each other at WrestleMania. And Roman Reigns is going to beat The Fiend at WrestleMania and hold the belt high. And for me, the fact that all that's going to happen and people are going to go nuts. He's going to come out at the Royal Rumble. He's going to win the Royal Rumble, and people are going to cheer. No one's going to boo him. No one's going to get upset. They're all going to cheer. They're going to go crazy. And then when he calls out The Fiend, they're going to go nuts. And then as he's standing over top of The Fiend, holding the belt high, everyone's going to be going crazy. And they're going to be going, yeah, yeah, big dog, big dog. It's going to be awesome. I cannot wait for that day and that moment to happen, because it will be vindication for what he had to go through before he got the leukemia. And it just shows you that even leukemia, cancer, can come in and feel like it rocks your world and feel like it can just take you down. But nothing is strong enough to take you down. And I don't know Roman Reigns' personal faith. I don't know who he believes in, but I do know who is a healing God, and I know that is my God. And for me, when I hear stuff like that, I think, look what God can do and how God can take somebody who was even in the dumps before he got leukemia and take him and build him up. What an awesome God. And see how God can change and how God can transform people. What an awesome God. And then the next thing that's really been awesome is I've loved the Kofi Kingston year of Kofi. Letting Kofi come out and just put on banger matches. And then after putting on these top of the line matches, get a title shot against Daniel Bryan and beat Daniel Bryan. And finally get the belt. The belt he's been after. Kofi Kingston he has done everything for the company. He's gone to every charity event. He's put on fake accents, pretended to be from different places, done different stunts that he didn't really probably want to do. I know he didn't want to do. They all thought it was ridiculous to come out as the New Day, as the choir, the church choir that was supposed to be bad guys. Like all this stuff that's just like, we don't want to do this, but we're going to because we're asked to. We're going to do what we're asked. We're going to do what we're told. We're going to keep our head to the ground, nose to the grind, keep working, doing everything we can, not just to get ahead for us, but for the company. And to see that rewarded was awesome. And not even just rewarded because everybody knows Randy Orton kind of buried him. Not kind of. Shoveled dirt, heaped dirt on top of him. And when he was starting to take off several years ago, Randy Orton, with one comment like that, just buried the dude. And now, here's Kofi Kingston, rises up, wins the belt, holds it for several months. Like, it wasn't just like a 2-month stint. It was at least, I think it was 4 or 5 months that Kofi Kingston had the belt. And one of the guys that he got to feud while holding on to the belt was Randy Orton. So he got to go and he got to beat Randy Orton. He got to vindicate and prove in storyline and in real life, you said I couldn't do this. Look at me now. I'm doing this to show you you were wrong. I've put in the time. I've kept working. I heard what you said. I fell to the ground and I got back up, and I'm going to keep pushing. I'm going to keep going. And to me, that was next to Roman Reigns, that was one of the more uplifting, encouraging stories of the year. Really just kind of get you in the feels, get you in the heart a little bit. Another thing I liked about wrestling in 2019 is the resurrection of WCW. Oh, I'm sorry. I mean, the birth of AEW, All Elite Wrestling. And I say that because really, if you look at it, everything they've done, even at the announcement of their company, was done almost to the script of how WCW became a company. Everything they did was right along the line of what WCW did. Then they go out and they even do what WCW did and grab WWE wrestlers and bring them in and put them at the forefront of their company. They go out and they grab Dean Ambrose. They have Chris Jericho. They've got Cody Rhodes. They got Goldust, Dustin Rhodes. They go out and they've got all these guys from WWE. Jack Swagger comes in. They all come in, and as they are now wrestling, they then go and get WCW trademarks for their pay-per-views, for different things, so that they can become more and more like WCW, which I think is good and cool. But to me, it's not original. It's doing what they did, and the problem is WCW didn't succeed. WCW failed, and what I'm afraid is we're already starting to see AEW fall a little bit. There's still time. They can still right the path. They can still make things right and fix stuff, but we're already starting to see them kind of start to trail behind the best thing about AEW. And I know you sit there and go, the best thing about AEW? The best thing about AEW is that it forced WWE to put NXT on USA Network. So the best thing about AEW is NXT, because NXT goes head-to-head every Wednesday with AEW. And as they go head-to-head, NXT was great on the network. Everyone loved it. I loved NXT takeovers. I loved watching NXT, but it was just on WWE Network. You had to have a paid subscription. If you didn't, you couldn't watch it. And that's just kind of, not everyone can see it. The other thing too, it was this hour-long show and it was pre-taped. And when they do pre-tape, that means the crowd is in there for hours at a time watching an entire season of a show in one taping. And the crowds can get tired and it can lose a little bit. Now they do it not pre-taped, it's live, and it's 2 hours every Wednesday. And they come in and they have just been knocking it out of the park. And you've got Undisputed Era. Oh, I love Undisputed Era. Adam Cole, baby. You've got all these guys that come in and they do wrestling the way wrestling is supposed to be done. And they're even getting better at the storylines. The storylines are becoming better. They're able with 2 hours to kind of intermingle stuff and intertwine all these storylines, do a little bit of backstage stuff, but really focus more on the wrestling and letting these guys come out and show off how good of wrestlers they really are. And it says a lot when WWE main roster guys like Raw and SmackDown guys are coming in and saying, I don't want to be on main roster, I want to be on NXT. Can I go back? I want to wrestle on NXT on USA Network. Finn Balor, Kevin Owens, both guys that went back, Finn Balor's still back. They gave up main roster to go to NXT. And that's awesome. I think that's one of the coolest things ever. And it really shows how great NXT is. Now, talking about NXT, there's another in wrestling promotion, and that's NWA. I love that NWA has come to YouTube and that they are doing it's pre-taped, but they're doing a weekly show that comes out on YouTube on Tuesday nights, and it's old school wrestling with modern day wrestlers, but they're letting them do everything the way they used to back in the 60s, 70s, 80s. It's different than what you see every day, and for me, I love different. I love being able to go and watch and see the set and just feel like I'm just going back in time. It gives you that sentimental feel of going back in time and just watching wrestling the way my grandfather and grandmother would have watched wrestling. And just seeing what they would have seen when they watched it on TV. That's really cool to me. And it kind of actually brings a connection for me back to my grandparents. And I really enjoy that. And I've loved watching NWA. And the other thing I love about NWA is it's not just a whole bunch of no-name wrestlers. They're actually bringing in guys. And some of them, like Nick Aldis, they're bringing up guys and making them big names. But when you're able to take a Nick Aldis and then you bring in the Pope to come in, that when I saw that, I was like, what? The Pope is on NWA? Yes, yes, yes. This is so awesome. He's going to elevate that show even more with his talking, because that's what NWA is really about, is about the presentation and the interviews and how good are you at giving a promo. And then they bring in Marty Scurll also. So you've got all of these guys they're bringing in that should be at places like Impact or WWE or AEW or New Japan. They're getting these guys to come to NWA and really just knocking it out of the park and just having fun with it and elevating the show even more. It's really cool to see. Now, my last two things that I really liked about 2019, one of them being Survivor Series. And I'm not going to go into total detail about Survivor Series. I might do an episode that goes back and looks at Survivor Series since I didn't get to do a review of it. But Survivor Series weekend, just saying in that they let NXT step out. They let NXT beat Raw, beat SmackDown, take the championship, and those guys and gals from NXT wrestled two grueling nights of wrestling back to back. They did War Games, then they did Survivor Series, and they came out, and at Survivor Series, I was worried because I thought the NXT guys, they're just going to kind of halfway do it. They might not even let the guys that have wrestled the night before wrestle. They might find a way to get them out of those matches. No, they showed up and they put on some bangers, just out of the park. And Rhea Ripley, Keith Lee, Adam Cole, all these guys got a chance to go out and make a name for themselves. And they got a chance to show what they're really made of. And then on top of that, Rhea Ripley, wasn't really in NXT. She was over in NXT UK, and she finally gets to come over and she gets to make a name for herself all through all the Survivor Series stuff. And, oh man, it was just so good. Oh, I can't tell you how much I enjoyed NXT on Survivor Series and Rhea Ripley and Keith Lee, because Keith Lee took that mic and Keith Lee took control, and that was his team. He was Team NXT. And people listened to him, and he showed up, and he showed why NXT is so great. Because a lot of times a show like Raw is, if Seth Rollins or Roman Reigns get hurt and they go away, you have nobody to take control, and you're scrambling for about a month trying to get someone elevated enough to be able to take over the show as the main character and everyone to like it. But on NXT, if Adam Cole gets hurt, you've got anybody else from that roster that can step up. You've got Matt Riddle, you've got Keith Lee, you've got The Dream, you've got anybody on Undisputed Era. you've got so many guys on that roster that can step up. And the same thing in the women's locker room over on NXT. You've got so many guys that can step up. And that was just kind of elevated and shown even brighter that day at Survivor Series and at NXT TakeOver War Games. Oh, so good. But I don't want to spend too much time on that. But that's just kind of my feelings about that. It's probably one of the best things ever in WWE in a very long time, at least. It's since I've been watching WWE, that is my favorite pay-per-view all time since I've been watching. Now, there's a lot of pay-per-views that happen, but when I wasn't watching, so I can't say for everyone, but for me, since I've been watching, my favorite pay-per-view ever. The next thing and the last thing that I've really liked, though, about wrestling in 2019, and you're going to think this is weird, a lot of people like heel turns. I've really enjoyed the face turns. I've loved watching some of these guys and gals go from heel to face. Because this year, a lot of times when that happens, it can be done really badly, or the guys and gals are just better as heels. Like The Miz, I love him to death, but really, he is just a great heel. He needs to quit being a face. He needs to go back to being a heel, and that's what he thrives at. That's what he's best at, and that's what everyone likes him as. So, who were some of the best face turns of 2019? One of them, and I struggled with saying this at first because he is such a great heel, Kevin Owens. His face turn was so impactful and so strong. And the fact is that it wasn't just strong when he turned face at first, because he turned face, he turned heel, then he turned face again. And when he turned face again, it was on against Shane McMahon. And so you get Shane McMahon going head to head, toe to toe with Kevin Owens, and they let Kevin Owens take a microphone and go. And I loved it because as a face, he didn't just go up and go, "You're bad, so I'm going to beat you," or "I love the crowd. These people are great. I'm going to beat you because you don't love the crowd." Those faces are okay, but I love it when a face comes out and is like, "No, I'm going to beat you because you're a bad dude, because the reason why you're a bad dude is you keep pushing me down. You keep doing wrong stuff. You keep hurting me. You keep hurting other wrestlers. You are bad management. And what's best for the business is that you get gone. And I am going to come in and get rid of you. That is my goal. That's what I'm going to do." And that is what Kevin Owens was, is I am coming in and I'm standing up for something I believe in, and I'm going to speak the truth. I'm not going to speak what everyone wants to hear. I'm going to speak the truth. And I loved, there's one line that kind of just cemented him as a great face, is when he's on the microphone and they turn off one of the microphones and he throws it down and he grabs another microphone and he says, "Guess what, idiot? There's more than one microphone." Oh, it's so great. I loved it. And the crazy thing is he's still a great face. When he comes out now and he's going against Seth Rollins, and he's speaking up about why Seth Rollins is just a bad dude, it's not because he's hurt the WWE universe. It's because, dude, you're so full of yourself. You come out here and you talk all this trash and you badmouth me, you badmouth other wrestlers. You can't do that. I'm going to stand up to you for that. And you going around and beating people up and you're sending people out to beat me up. I'm going to stand my ground on that. And it is, I will tell you, this AOP, Seth Rollins, Kevin Owens, all of that mixed together. They've got Rey Mysterio added into the mix of all this. I am loving all of these storylines just kind of diving together. It's a lot of fun for me. It's been really cool to see and to watch and to listen to hear what's going on. And it's in part of it is, one, Seth's a really good heel, and so is AOP, but the other part is Kevin Owens is such a good face, and he really makes you, like, you want to be there rooting for him, and you want to fight for him, and you want to see him win. Another person that I've loved with their face turn, Rhea Ripley. Okay, Rhea Ripley, she turned face when she went from NXT UK to NXT. She came out, and everyone expected her to come out because she is just one bad mamma jamma. All right, she is rough, she is tough, she is a sock'em robot. Okay, she comes in, she just looks tough. She looks like the girl you're not supposed to bring home to mom. She's got the leather jacket. She looks like she could beat any dude up, maybe even Brock Lesnar. And the only other girl that looks like that is Shayna Baszler. And everyone thought it was just going to be the two of them coming out and just socking it out, both of them being heels, both of them trying to beat everybody up. But no, she comes out and saves the faces. She comes out and helps Candice LeRae. And when she did that at first, I was like, oh no, she's going to be a wimp. Oh no. But she's not. She comes out and I'm still going to be me. I'm still going to beat people up. I'm still going to do what I want. But if I think something's wrong, I'm going to stand up and say, don't do that. That's wrong. If I think you're doing something bad, I'm going to stand up to you and say, get out of here. You're doing something bad. Quit it. She kind of stands up for the defenseless, which I think is a really, really cool thing. The other person I loved, Cody Rhodes, has gone from being the heel of a faction that everyone loved to hate. Everyone hated on Cody Rhodes. And over in New Japan and Ring of Honor, Cody Rhodes was the bad guy. He was in charge and head of the faction that was the bad guy. And out of nowhere, he leaves New Japan, leaves Ring of Honor, starts up AEW, and has become the good guy for everybody who's rooting against WWE. Not just rooting against, everybody that's rooting for wrestling in general he's the number one face. He's one everybody loves. And he's even, like, he can't go out there and be the bad guy in his company, even though he's really good. And that's what he's done all his life, is he's been the bad dude. He's always been the heel. And now he gets to be the face. He gets to be the face of wrestling. Not AEW, all of wrestling. Everybody looks up to him because of what he's done, how he started AEW, what he has stood for. Everybody loves the dude. And I think that's awesome. It excites me to see how much people love him, how much people are backing him and supporting him, and just all of the good he's doing for wrestling. Now, we get down. I've got two more that I really like. Daniel Bryan, his face turn. I love it because it's been a slow turn. They've slowly built him to be... He went from being bad, being the world's champion, championing for the world, and being mad at everybody because they were polluting the world, to I'm going to fight with Roman Reigns, not because I like Roman Reigns or because I like anybody else, but because I don't like Eric Rowan. And then slowly but surely throughout this stuff with The Fiend, he's all of a sudden going back to the yes chant, which is the ultimate face Daniel Bryan. And I'm loving it. I'm seeing him go face. But what is even more exciting for me is I've wanted to see American Dragon Daniel Bryan in WWE. And I have a gut feeling that after the Royal Rumble, because on Friday Night SmackDown, he tapped out The Miz in order to become the number one contender for the Royal Rumble against The Fiend for the belt. And I just have a gut feeling that Daniel Bryan is going in there and Daniel Bryan is going to get beat by the Fiend and become this really, really bad dude. And it's just going to be crazy. It's going to be crazy to see what he becomes. And his heel turn is going to be awesome. And so for me, the fact that he's turned face and the way he's turned face and the fact that it's been a slow burn and they've taken their time with it and it wasn't just a overnight type of thing, you could actually see him struggling with it and see him slowly accepting being a face. That's really excited me to see that. The other guy that I've enjoyed it's happened over the past about 4 weeks is Samoa Joe. Samoa Joe's been on commentary, he's been talking, but every time AOP comes out, he's been talking about how bad of dudes they are, and I'm bad and mean for a reason. These guys are bad and mean for no reason. And finally, this past week on Monday Night Raw, he stood up to AOP. Oh man, it was so good. He stood up to AOP and took off his jacket and he's rolling up his sleeves and he's ready to take AOP on 2v1. And Seth Rollins comes over and he's like, no. Hey, guys. Sorry, my voices aren't good, but guys, okay, so yeah, everything's good, Joe. And like once things calm down and Joe's kind of like calmed down a little bit, Seth Rollins starts to walk away and he looks at AOP and says, finish him. And they go and get him. Oh, when Joe comes back, I don't know how long it's going to take to get Joe back, but when Joe does come back and takes out AOP and is standing and goes on a feud with Seth Rollins and they do this build, and here's my gut feeling. They're going to let him beat Seth Rollins, and then he's going to go on to take on Brock Lesnar, and you're going to have a face Joe versus Brock Lesnar. Whoo! All right, man. I cannot wait for that to happen. I hope that happens so much. But with that, and my hope for that, and my love for wrestling, I want to talk about another face turn. And I want to go to the Bible in order to look at this face turn. So if you guys will, let's go ahead and let's dive into God's Word and get passionate about that. Today I want to look at Colossians chapter 1, verses 21 through 23. And as we look at Colossians 21 through 23, it talks about an actual heel turn. It talks about someone who goes from being a bad guy to being a good guy. I'm sorry, I said heel turn. I meant face turn. It talks about someone going from a bad guy to a good guy. And this is what Paul, the writer of Colossians, says to the Colossians church. Once you were alienated from God and were enemies in your minds because of your evil behavior, but now he has reconciled you by Christ's physical body through death to present you holy in his sight, without blemish and free from accusation. I love that. Once you were alienated from God and were enemies in your minds because of your evil behavior. Because of what you did, because of who you were an enemy of God. And when I think about that in wrestling, I think of that as because of who you were a Baron Corbin going up against the big dog, Roman Reigns. Everybody knows Roman Reigns is going to win. Never bet against Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns always wins. Same thing with God. God always wins. And you got to sit there and think, if you know God always wins, and you're Baron Corbin, and you know Roman Reigns always wins, why do you keep going after him? Why don't you join forces? Why don't you decide to just be like Roman Reigns? Well, the thing is we used to be like that. Some of you might still be like that. You might be going against God. Your evil behavior, and I say evil, and I was sitting there going, man, you calling me evil? Look, man, anybody that does anything that goes against God and God's will and God's plan is evil. If it goes against bringing love, peace, unity, it's evil. And here's the thing. I say that because I was evil. I did bad stuff. I've done bad stuff. But the craziest part is God's reconciled us. He sent Christ down to die on the cross for us. He sent his physical body to come and be a sacrifice for you and me, so that we could be sinless, so that we are no longer on the bad side. We are good guys. And some of us have just those like Reah Ripley's, where we were bad, and then the next day we show up, and now we're good. All of a sudden, God hit us with it, and we were, I was doing so bad. I need to stop doing that. I need to follow God. I believe that Jesus did this. I need to have faith in him. But there are some of us that are more like the Daniel Bryan, the slow turn, that we go through life, and we're just like, I know I got to be good. I want to follow God. I believe in God, but I don't know that I'm ready to be a good guy yet. I don't know. And the cool part is God doesn't go away. He's still there waiting for you. He says, when you're ready to say, yes, I'm here. When you're ready to follow me, I'm here. And the funny part is God has his own stable. All right? Satan has his stable. People are out there doing their own thing, but God has a stable. And that stable, I like to call it God's kingdom, is the name of that stable, or that faction, whichever one you want to call it. But God's kingdom. And here's what you've got to do to be part of God's kingdom. All right? All you have to do that is continue in your faith, established and firm, not moved from hope, held out in the gospel. This is the gospel that you heard and that has been proclaimed to every creature under heaven, and of which I, Paul, have become a servant. Here's the best part. You ready? You don't have to pay money. You don't have to go out and do a whole bunch of crazy stuff. You don't have to shave your head like all the other factions decide that you have to do to join theirs. You don't have to go beat anybody up. You don't have to even go save people. All you have to do is believe. I take that back. All you have to do is have faith. Faith is one step past believing. Faith is saying, I believe so much that I'm going to follow. Faith is saying, like the chair, I don't just believe that chair can hold me. I'm going to sit in the chair and let it hold me. I don't believe that God is real. I'm going to live out what he's put in the Bible, what he's put in his word, because I believe it's all true. I believe it's all real. That's all God asks is have faith. Follow. If you follow, I will save. You will be a part of the winning team. Because here's the craziest part. At the end of the Bible, it talks about Revelation, and Revelation talks about all this bad stuff that's going to happen in this war between good and evil, Satan and God, demons and angels, everybody coming to this final battle. And Revelation isn't all about all of the signs and wonders. It's about that, but it's more about, in the end, God wins. And those that are not with God are destroyed, and those that are with God get to live in eternity with him forever. What side do you want to be on? What side are you on? And what I want to encourage you is, if you are on the side of God, keep strong in your faith. Stand firm in your faith. Keep following the Lord. And if you haven't yet and you want to, here's what I want to encourage you to do. Reach out to me. You can hit me up on Facebook. You can message me on Faith Family Wrestling. You can comment here. You can message me here on Podbean, on YouTube. You can also send me a message through my email, if you want to, at faithfamilywrestling@gmail.com. Get a hold of me. Let me know, hey, I want to know more about this Jesus guy. I'd love to talk to you about him. Also, what I want to encourage is if you are standing firm in your faith and you're already a Christian, let's help each other and support each other. All right? That Facebook account, the Instagram account we have, it's not just for me to put out stuff and promote this podcast. It's to have open discussion, not just about our passion for wrestling, but to lift each other up in our faith and to talk about what God is teaching us, and maybe be able to use that to talk to other wrestling fans about Jesus. Well, that's all I've got. I'm going to be doing this every week. I will tell you, me and my wife, we are expecting our third child any day now. So if that baby decides to pop out, I might miss a week or two of doing the podcast. But I'm going to try to every week do this podcast and have it out by Saturday. Thank you for listening. And I want you all to remember, strengthen your faith. Unite with your family, and let that wrestling passion fly.